And here we have Powers of X #1 by Jonathan Hickman. And, I don't think I have too much to say about this book. It definitely continues off where, in a sense, I guess, where the House of X left off, #1 left off, but not really. It's kind of its own thing. What we're seeing here, at least in this book, it appears that it's telling a story across time. So we have, for example, and I'll go ahead and just focus in a little bit here so y'all can kind of understand what I'm talking about. Starting at the top here, basically the past. So I would assume that's prior to the X-Men being formed. The present, which is this right here. Then we have, I think, 100 years in the future represented here, and then 1,000 years in the future. So the general gist of what I got from everything here, reading this book, was that, so yeah, we get something starting off in the beginning. I guess this is kind of the either reimagining or just kind of just retelling of how Charles Xavier and Moira McTaggart first met back in Ireland. Obviously some kind of festival going on, but this is what kind of kicks things off. But then we get a little bit of a foreshadowing of things that are going to be coming later on here in this issue here, or just kind of setting the backdrop there. But interestingly enough, though, what happens really that is of note in this first meeting between Moira and Charles Xavier is that she is already aware of the fact that he's a mutant. So that's kind of interesting. And I'm looking to see how they really explain that, but you're kind of left with that. And then what happens from here on is, we get a little bit of a continuation of what happened in House of X, just kind of a little bit of an aftermath after Mystique was able to go back and take back what it is that she stole, what her, Sabretooth, and Toad had stole. So fast forward a little bit here, get over here. It's definitely, the more you read this, it's definitely not seeming like the X-Men are, or I should say the mutants here. Maybe I should just say, I'll just say the X-Men for now, and that'll kind of represent me, meaning just the mutants in general here. There's something going on here, and it's just not, it's not good. They don't seem like the good guys here, as you know from what I talked about in the last issue. And somebody in the previous video had said that this is all taking place in the 616 Marvel Universe. So this is all happening in the main Marvel storyline. I guess some of the things I've heard, and this is probably more accurate from other people, is that since they had already established the X-Men in previous incarnations as these kind of, I guess you could say, mutant supremacists, as it were, thinking they're better than humanity and things like that, because that's something that is a sentiment that is kind of expressed, which is something I should have mentioned in the first issue of House of X between Cyclops and the Fantastic Four, with Reed Richards. He's sitting there saying that he always knew he was more, and now he kind of gets to show it or kind of express it. So there's definitely this sense of, mutant superiority and them being basically the apex on the planet. But what's interesting is this whole book here, at least in Powers of X, is kind of a little bit of a journey across time. And I could only gather just from what, the brief things that have been read here, is that something happens. Something happens that at some point in time, it seems like the mutants might have enjoyed a pretty good run, but ultimately there's almost shades of what you would expect in like Days of Future Past, right? With the Sentinels and all that, and things happening. Not necessarily that mutants ended up in internment camps, but definitely some kind of almost a post-apocalyptic dystopian event happening, and there's some kind of resistance, seems like, going on with certain mutants. So that's kind of the general gist of what I got from reading this here. Interesting stuff. A little bit more of a foundation being laid. And this was interesting too, is them talking about the Sinister line, and of course they're meaning Mr. Sinister and him again creating mutants. If you remember, that's something that he did that he was pretty much known for was his engineering and stuff. And they talk a little bit more about that here, and in some detail of other mutants that he made and things like that, and key events that apparently happened. And the other cool thing is that they also looks like Nimrod is going to play a role, a good portion of a role in this Powers of X series. So I don't know if this will. I'm sure it'll cross over at some point in time into the House of X series. But for those of you that don't recall Nimrod was the Sentinel that's supposed to be like the cream of the crop of all Sentinels, the one that is completely sentient because of his advanced AI. So he has the ability of like free will thinking and all that stuff, and being able to rationalize stuff. So he's playing a role in all this. And like I said, there's at different points of time it takes you to, again, at some points you're at 100 years in the future, and then towards the end here it focuses on the 1,000 years in the future at some point, but it seems to really be focusing on 100 years in the future from the present. So that seems to be the main bulk of the story here. So as you can see, there's some kind of resistance going on. Something happened. So I'm sure that's something that'll be fleshed out a little bit more down the line in both Powers of X and House of X. So, jury's still out what I think about this. I mean, for the most part, it just feels to me like the X-Men probably, and this is just me kind of predicting a little bit of what I think might happen, probably with all the stuff that happened with them, just kind of maybe a little bit strong-arming their way into getting their own mutant state, just kind of laid the groundwork for this future here. And it'll be interesting to see what it is that caused all this, why mutants now seem to be more on the they're more on the I wouldn't say the offensive, but I guess there's this kind of dystopian future, like I said, happening with them, where they're not living in the kind of harmony that at least was set forth in House of X, where that seems to be the direction that they're trying to go, is just have a complete mutant state for mutants by mutants exclusively. And if you recall also, and this is something that I forgot to mention, so I do apologize for not mentioning this in the House of X review, they talked about the predictions of how mutants are basically going to replace humanity at some point. That at one point in time, the population on the planet is basically going to be mutants. And of course, what's kind of expressed with the and again, this is something I should have explained in a little bit more detail in House of X. I didn't think about it till after the video though. But what all these other groups are trying to do is basically it seems like they're trying to make sure that they're not the ones that become extinct. So again, draw whatever conclusion you will from that, whether or not the X-Men are the good guys or the bad guys. But I guess we'll have to see once we get further on down the series what it is exactly that is happening here, if there's going to be any kind of redemption for the X-Men, if it's going to be a thing of that they went too far trying to have this kind of a perfect mutant world, and by forcefully doing so, they kind of planted the seeds for their own demise down the line. So I guess we'll have to wait and see on that. But, it's okay so far. Like I said, again, at this point, only 2 books in regarding this story, I'm still not all that impressed with what Jonathan Hickman has done so far. I mean, like I said, it's okay. I won't go as far as to say it's bad. It's enough to keep me interested, but I just need a little bit more. Just need a little bit more from Jonathan Hickman. So I'm hoping to see all these things that are happening so far. It looks like they're building towards something. I'm just hoping it's one of those things that's really worth the payoff, because that's what it is with these comic books. I mean, if that should be what it's all about, right? As long as it's all worth the payoff at the end, cool. I just hope that it's not a lot of fluff and making it seem like it's building towards something, but ultimately it builds up to a point that there's no gratification at the end of that. That it's just kind of like a so-so, whatever, kind of throwaway story. But I guess we'll see. Anyways, let me know what you guys think in the comment section below. If you have any recommendations, as always, please let me know. And yeah, I'll try to get the next video up as soon as possible. If you're first time watcher here on the channel, please be sure to subscribe, hit the bell notification, hit the like button. All that stuff helps me, the comments as well. So I'll catch you guys on the next one. And yeah, the hunt continues as always.